Hello. I'm just firing up all the streams here. Just a couple minutes. Just firing up all the streams here. I've got something. Just a couple minutes. That ought to be muted is not. There we go. Alright. At least got a quick mic check out of the deal. Okay. Alright, I see myself live on YouTube, see myself live on Twitch. And I think I'm on Facebook. There we go. Alright, I'm live on Facebook too. Hello everyone, welcome to Court of the Rings here on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. I'm SSG's Community Manager Cordova, and I'm going to be with you over the next hour with some of the latest news. Going to be doing a little bit of questing on Landreval. Do my best to answer your questions and see what we can put together here over the next hour. So welcome, hope you're staying safe and healthy. I have to admit, I'm a little tired today. One of the things about this sort of stay-at-home life we find ourselves in is I have got to be better about managing energy levels. What I mean by that is if I spend all day at my desk, working at my desk, and then all night at my desk playing video games, I don't actually expend much physical energy. And so you do that for a couple of days, and all of a sudden you find yourself unable to sleep. So I guess it was not last night, but the night before I basically was unable to sleep all night. And then I got caught up on it today, but I'm still feeling a little off. So hopefully the show it doesn't suck as much as I feel. Alright, hey, Renal from Paris, Deborah, David, Mark over on Facebook, Derek on YouTube, Glamdring, Ski, and Murata, and everyone over on Twitch. So I actually brought out my old Nintendo Wii because I've got one of those Wii Fit balance boards, and I've been doing a little bit of work on that, except in recent days. Except it ended up actually kind of hurting my back and stuff, so I had to take a pause on. All right, so what do we got going on in actual news in Lotro? We have got an announcement that we made this week. Let me call it up on the page so that I can show it to you. If you've not seen the news yet, we have extended our free period for basically quests, raids, content through May. So, it was going to be initially through yesterday, but we've actually extended it through the month of May. On top of that, if you are a VIP and you log in between now and May 31st, you will get a selection box of medium carry-alls. You can choose between crafting, task, essence, instrument, or housing decoration, and a greater morale potion that is bound to character, but delivered to every character you log in to on your account between May 1st and May 31st. So log in to 12 characters, get 12 bound to character greater morale potions. Reason it's bound to character is we don't want to create a situation where if it was bound to account, you can just create character after character and then send it to your bank, and then, so that's why the deal is on the bound to character. We did get a little bit of people asking why a greater morale potion. It's really just a symbolic gesture on that part there. We recognize that that's not like the most powerful gift you've ever received, but it just seemed like kind of a fun little tie-in. There was actually also a minor not minor, but there was a technical reason as well, which is that in order to deliver the selection box for the carryall, it had to be attached through the store somehow in a way that brought it to a different item. So we had to pick an item that would basically be the conveyance of the nicer gift. And we just thought morale would be a little more fun. So that's the why, really, on morale there. Otherwise, we did have a patch this week. Let me call up the release notes to that as well. We can go over anything we need to go over here. Alright, so, we made Diable, the new anniversary event cosmetics, the shoulder pads and boots, or is that what it is? Whatever, the pauldrons and greaves can now be dyed. We've put back the wood and ore nodes in Mists of Wilderland so that they are properly trackable. We dramatically reduced the amount of ground fog density in Mist Hollow for game performance. So we've determined that while it looks cool, that ground fog density is not real good for game performance. So we had to cut it back in Mist Hollow, and we're going to be hopefully long-term here trying to take a deeper dive into that to reduce its impact on game performance. It's really a particle density issue. There's too many particles effects going on. So what's up there? Fixed an issue with swift travel between Thokvist and Hilsild. You may need to go back to your stable master, though, in order to rediscover the destinations. Fix a swift travel issue between Scarhold and Histhild as well. Players who didn't get proper Virtue XP from completed deeds in Mists of Wilderland will now receive that Virtue XP at next character login. It'll version it back. So if you earned the Virtue XP and didn't get it, you should now get it just by logging in. Fixed really just a handful of map issues. Brought back the fishing hobby. Well, fixed an issue where the fishing hobby wasn't working in the Wells Langflood region. Floodfell's Warg Riders no longer using mounted combat speed and attacks. We also, one of the larger pieces of news, did unveil Tier 4 and Tier 5 of Remerchant. That started yesterday. Unique titles await players who overcome Tier 4 and Tier 5. Now, I've been hearing from the raiding community on the forums in particular that a lot of the raiding kinships are still working on Tier 3. Hopefully we'll see some success there, and those who wish to can move on to Tier 4 and Tier 5 in the near future. We added an advanced graphic particles option for static environmental objects. It's a checkbox that'll enable or disable scene object particles that display. Again, this is part of that ground fog thing that I mentioned earlier. So if you go and see a bit of patchy fog and all of a sudden your frame rate and everything just tanks to the point that you don't want it, this should help resolve that for now. Runic stack refinement will now happen more quickly. Disenchanting stacks of items that reward multiple components will now produce the correct number of components. Fix a description of the pigs. And we've done a bunch of other kind of small and not so small things with engineering and beyond to improve game performance. The main known issue is we still have some references to Northern Goal marks that are listing as TBD in the French and German clients. That should be fixed in the near future. Last I heard, we have a small patch set for next week. But I'll be working on the release notes today, so I haven't actually gone through all the check-ins or everything, but my understanding is it's a pretty small patch, so I don't think there's going to be a whole lot to talk about there. I think it's playing whack-a-mole on a few kind of remaining issues, and yeah, I think that's really actually all it is. But I'll find out more when I actually start putting together the release notes later today. Alright, let me go back to chat and see what we got here. Oh, my mic is peaking again, huh? Something keeps resetting my microphone input, and it's annoying me. Alright, hopefully that should be a little bit better. That's true. You do need to want to make sure that you log into the right server to get that down to account selection box for the carryall. At the moment, there is not a way to get the carryall gift sent to a different server. When we reopen our character transfers, which we're hoping to do here in the near future, then we'll see where we end up. But you should be able to do it then. Okay. Here we go. So I did a little bit of kind of cleanup work from last Friday's live stream in the same area where I currently am, and I'm just continuing to do what I basically did last week here. I found all those doom shrooms and all the other kind of stuff, though, and now I'm figuring out what's been attacking the orcs, other than myself. What else has been attacking the orcs? Yeah. Also, I worked just a little bit on some of my hot barring to kind of make it more what I want it to be in the past week. This is the kind of thing I've been doing lately. I had my ranged attack set improperly in target 6 rather than... So now I can just kind of scroll across the keyboard. Now I'm going back to Ikad-ul. Thanks, Debbie, on Facebook. T3 was already crazy. T4-5 is just torture. Well, that sucks. I think we'll see as people start to learn new strategies and get a little more time with it, that hopefully that'll just be a short-term concern. There we go.
Now then. Will you hear my plight?
Eek. That's pretty gross. Alright, where am I going? Okay. Go. So, Nizumet, I understand why players would want to stack those Virtue XP items in their inventory, but the intention is not that they be sort of stored for the future. It's more meant for instant consumption. So while I certainly understand why you might want to do it, I really don't see the team necessarily wanting that to be the case. Oh, there's some Kegra. Oh yeah, those ones I just loot. Right here, you evil vapor. I don't have anything to announce about West Rohan on Legendary, although I would assume that that's happening fairly soon. I would imagine that these carryalls would be available in the Lotro store eventually. I don't have a timetable on that to announce. Right now, I am currently... let's see, 125 here. Yeah. When character transfers reopen, will you be able to transfer from legendary to normal servers? I believe the answer to that is yes. You should be able to get the carry-all selector on the legendary worlds if you want to. I think there's probably some of the same principles applied as to why the loot boxes don't also stack. I think the intention is to try to encourage people to open them right away. Although again, I get you. I'm gonna leave it to chat to give you a good LI guide, like Leopot. But yeah, we've got the community's put together a bunch of really good guides for that over the years. What are my PC specs? My PC specs are pretty good. I don't really get into PC specs too much, but I should be able to get that info for you. First, you'll have Specky on my account. I do not. Okay. Alright, I am using an Intel Core i7 It's an i7 7700 CPU at 4.2 gigahertz. I've got 32 gigs of RAM installed. I'm running Windows 10 64-bit. I have got, for a video card, it's not showing up in the device specifications here. System info. Here we go. Yeah, I'm not seeing it. I've got a 1060. It's a pretty old, G4, what, NVIDIA 1060? That I've had for a couple years now. I know that people who are on the bleeding edge of video cards will be like, oh, you're using a 1060? That's like so old, man. It's like a grandma's card. I'll tell you though, it works just fine for me. And video cards are so crazy expensive that I just sort of keep using it. It seems to be fine for the kind of gaming I do. Otherwise, I have something around the range of 500 megabyte SSD that I run pretty much all my games off of, along with Windows. I know some people like to run Windows on an SSD and then put their games on a regular non-SSD drive, but especially for Lotro and DDO, having an SSD will drop that load screen time so dramatically that I can't imagine not putting Lotro on an SSD if I have one available. I actually picked up this computer. It was a Newegg special. I think I paid somewhere in the range of about $1,100 for it or something. And that would have been about 3 years ago. It was right... I don't know the exact time. It was right before the Bitcoin craze basically made buying a video card a nightmare. It was literally weeks before that happened when the Bitcoin craze just sort of dried up the channel for video cards. So I got kind of lucky that the computer I spec'd out and picked up just happened to beat the rush, because a few weeks later that computer was like all of a sudden $400 more. So Ponton, the thing about using the hard disk drive for regular games is you're missing out. You're missing out on a lot of like nice load screens, especially for Lotro. Get the on an SSD. It'll take your load screens from seeing them to not even having enough time to read the text before it's done. I tend to, when I buy computers, I tend to buy up, which, again, I could have gotten an $800 computer back in the last time I bought, but I dropped an extra couple $100 more to try to future-proof it, because I don't buy computers very often. You'll probably still see, assuming it lasts, hopefully, you'll be seeing me run on this computer for probably the next 7-8 years. And so I prefer to, like I say, buy up a little bit on this stuff. That's a waste. Any chance we'll hear from the class devs about which roles they see each class fulfilling? I think that the reason we might be somewhat hesitant to want to do that is that it delves into personal opinion in a way that is not conducive to good dialogue with the community. I would say that the answer should be that they would want to do the work based on the roles that players want their characters to fulfill, mixed with what makes sense for game balance as a whole, rather than try to issue some kind of statement that if you're not fitting a certain role, that you're somehow playing a class role. I think that it would be better, and generally people would prefer, that players be able to fulfill the role they want to fulfill within some level of reason, you know. If you're a DPS spec hunter, you shouldn't probably have top healing of others in the game, for example, you know. But within relative reason, I think that that is a better way forward than to try to issue some kind of edict to the community about what they should and should not be doing with their classes. The forums love to discuss what role a character must and must not play. Generally, I find that the developers who work on the game prefer a less rigid approach. So, better feedback rather than, say, trying to, come down from the mountain and say, if you're doing this, you are doing it wrong. It's better to say, well, how are you currently playing your character? How do you see that character fitting into the game? If we're not doing what you want us to do regarding, say, role fulfillment, why should that role be given priority, etc., etc.? Otherwise, I would say the very high level, kind of not nuanced overview, I would use the class descriptions as stated on character creation as a general guideline for what, at least at the time of that class's creation, the overall look and feel of it is supposed to be. But I also think you're rarely going to find a developer who's like, and if you don't do that, then whatever. I think people enjoy when players find new ways to do things that are interesting. Yeah, exactly. One is more of a listening role, and the other is more of a my rule is law kind of a thing. That's a very interesting question. I would need to... Edith over on Twitch has a question that I'm not sure I've really given a lot of thought to, but perhaps I ought to have, which is, what does SSG recommend that families do with accounts for players who have become deceased? That is, the unfortunate reality of our lives, right? That does happen sometimes. I would say that... Actually, I would say I need to contact our head of customer service and say, I don't know, what do you think we should do? Should I have you guys send in a ticket to close the account? And just sort of let it sit there under the assumption, it's fine? And as long as the person who passed away maintained good account security, it should be just fine to let that account just sort of sit. But if there's a concern, then perhaps... I bet CS actually does get these tickets, and I just don't really think about it. So they may well have something in place. Is there a Court of the Dungeons for DDO? No, on the DDO side, I use... Well, most of my titles are kind of dumb, because I like dumb things. So on the DDO side, I like alliteration and/or bad puns. So back in the day when I was doing 2 streams a week on that side, it was the weekly Wednesday lunchtime live stream. And then when I was doing a Friday noon show, back when Andy was still CM here on the Turbine days, I did one called Friday Afternoon. And I thought of the idea, I was like, rather than having to explain when my show is every week, what if I just made the when part of the title? Weekly, Wednesday, lunchtime, live stream. Friday, afternoon. There you go. And so I considered trying to figure out a way to do that for Lord of the Rings when I was doing this. But then just the dumb, whatever you want to call it, wordplay of Court of the Rings instead of Lord of the Rings was just too appealing to me. So I went with that one instead of, basically stealing the Friday afternoon name. I would say Citadel of Geeks that I find it highly unlikely, highly unlikely, that account support would be supportive of another family member taking over someone's account. Even, we don't allow, by our terms of service, say, a kid to play on their dad's account or a dad to play on their kid's account. Now, we're also not completely naive, but when it comes to that being a formalized process of transferring account ownership, the answer is we do not. So I think under a scenario of someone passing away, the question would be, how would one close a loved one's account after they pass, rather than how could they transfer ownership of that account? I have not had time on the live worlds to get to the new content yet. I've been playing a little bit of both Lotro and DDO, but I've more been not in recent weeks just due to other things going on in my life. I need 1 invoker. So technically, Tannic, I think the lawyers would say that if a kid is too young to enter into an agreement with Standing Stone Games, then they are technically not allowed to play it. But even so, it would be the, under the assumption of, okay, sure, yeah, but that's not what is actually going to happen. Even under that scenario, though, the situation would be that the parent maintains ownership and control of the account long term, because it would not be the kid's account, it would be the parent's account. And so if after, let's say, that child reaches the age of majority, they would be able to create their own account that they would have control over and be able to play the game fresh. Yes, they would have to start over. Generally, what would happen, I think, in a practical sense, is as long as it doesn't become an issue, then we're unlikely to even be aware of it happening, right? In terms of like transferring of ownership from a loved one's account to someone else's, as long as they shared their credentials, which they shouldn't have, but that happens, whatever. Where it would become an issue for us would be when in the future there would be some kind of dispute or other concern, and then they would reach out to customer service to do something that CS is unable to do. Transfer my characters from one account to another, for example, or reset the password on an account even though the person doesn't have credentials in order to be able to do so. Or little Jimmy decides that he wants some money and decides to sell your account to a gold spammer, and then the person's like, oh my god! And then it comes to light that multiple people have been using the account. After Mordor, what is next for the devs? Would we be adding more South and Easterling regions, or more instances like the Fall of Numenor, or other such things? So, this summer, we will be focusing on the wedding of Aragorn and Arwen. And we've embarked with Update 26 here on a new storyline focusing on the legacy of Durin in the Trials of the Dwarves. We will, as stated in the producer's letter, we're making inroads to doing Gundabad next year. So I think that is about as much in terms of the long-term planning as we're ready to announce. Mark, we frequently hear from players who are at the cap of their wardrobe space and want more space. We do have some database reasons why we need to not just make it unlimited, but given how much it is also, you know, well, given that it's a bit of a moneymaker, it would not surprise me if at some point in the future we weren't able to offer more. I think the answer is we want to offer as much space as the engineers let us. Trying to look at chat. Okay, so I need to follow the path to Gothenir, which means I am going the wrong way. Okay. Oh, so I actually do want to keep going up through the community there, or through the city there. Okay. Oh no. I think these... Oh, okay. Someone has a question about a thing in the producer's letter where we talked about a content that will scale based on party size and how that will fit into lore and the story. Oops. That is a question that Jeff Libby and A Maid of Lions and Chris Pearson are well aware of and have plans to deal with. I think what we'll find is that that particular scaling area is not so much directly tied to the bleeding edge of Endgame as much as it is perhaps thematically tied into the world. I think they have a plan basically to deal with it, which would mean that you are not going to need to know that X happened before Y. But I don't know exactly how that's going to work right now. Oh, here we go. A Lord of the Rings title. I like it. I like it. That is my kind of goofy. I approve. It gets the official Cordovan stamp of approval there. Oh, did I go the wrong way again? I think I just did. Oh no, here we go. Okay. Yeah, I don't. That's. I mean, I know that that's something that they've looked at. I just don't know what their plans are exactly. But we're pretty. I mean, if anyone's, they tend to be pretty super picky about that thing, about that kind of thing. So I'm sure that they've got something kind of set up to deal with it. Thank you, Vince or Stuart. I have an old radio voice. is unhappy with the amount of activity in the Floodfells and wants to know if we're going to add more of an activity to Floodfells. I don't know. I would assume that there is a pretty good chance that that content will be used for other aspects of the Legacy of Durin and the Trials of the Dwarves. But whether that sort of meets your criteria of enough activity, I think I will leave to you. No! Stop! Stop doing that thing! Okay. There we are. Hey, Shaggy. Floodfell's dailies are perfect! Exclamation points. Do not touch them. Okay. Gundabad will not be the next update. The next update will be Aragorn and Arwen's wedding.
Now then, will you hear my plight?
Oh, okay. I don't know if I have time to run this, but I guess we'll see.
Shaldoth, the leader of the Kurgrim
I have not heard of plans to raise the gold cap. If I recall, the original gold cap is due to a 32-bit floating integer requirement. So as long as we continue to support the 32-bit client for Lotro, I'm not sure that we are technically able to raise the gold cap. No, Sarnalith. There are technical reasons why the prohibition on moving between NA and EU servers exists. I don't know that we have the ability to resolve that. Oh, sorry, I'm getting Slack messages and emails and Discords, etc., etc. I really should be better about turning that stuff off. Sorry. Thanks, Malik. Nice to see you here. Rob Hayes wants me to hit Clobber more often. Uh-oh. Maybe I better start paying attention here. Back off. Chug a healing pot. Oh no! Ah. I don't really have a favorite first or second stage character. I don't know. Sorry, person on Facebook who doesn't like my rotation. All I can say is it's working for me right now. And I'm working to improve it over time. I don't think I have Bloodborne's number, but I certainly have a way to get in touch with him. But like I say, I'm not really all that interested in... Well... Nah, I don't want to say that. I like reading about sort of how other people like to make their characters, but I also tend to prefer to learn by doing. Does Boston have a plan to return to work? The latest word from our governor was a couple of days ago, and I believe that it's been extended by a couple weeks rather than like a month, and that brings it through May 18th in the state of Massachusetts. The reality is that the state of Massachusetts is got an awful lot of sick and dying and dead people. When you look at, say, the case maps of the United States, you'll see that there's a huge cluster in the Northeast. A lot of that is New York City, but not all of it. And so Boston has been impacted particularly significantly by COVID-19. So I think my guess is that we're going to end up being probably staying at home for quite a bit longer than other parts of the country, would be my guess. Because we have a long ways to go here yet. To the point that, you know, you're seeing a lot of kind of like protests and all sorts of stuff around the country from people who maybe feel their governors are being a little too conservative. Conservative and not politically conservative, but conservative and not reopening at the pace they'd prefer. But in Massachusetts, we haven't seen quite so much of that. Frankly, because it's pretty clear that we're nowhere near out of the woods here. Thankfully, for SSG, we are in a really good position to just work from home. It really hasn't been much of an issue for us to keep just cooking along at our regular pace, working from home. Especially with me. Like, for me, it's been a total non-issue. If anything, it's given me a couple extra hours to do work because I don't have to deal with the commute anymore, right? But so I think some of like the world builders and that are maybe having a few more issues, but even then, not much. We're pretty much just cooking along and doing our thing without any problems, and that's been pretty awesome. So I don't think there's really, at least on our end here, too much of a concern with just sort of, for however long we need to work from home, we're just working from home, right? I don't know, Tannic. So SSG has, and even back in the day, Turbine WB we're a video game company. So a lot of the sort of rigid office structure that you tend to see in more formal environments is less of a thing in the video game industry. Uh, we don't do 8 to 5, you know? People tend to sometimes come in late and then work late. Some people come in early and leave early. There's less, I guess, kind of office structural culture in video games, at least from my experience so far. So we have not typically run into issues where it's like, you have to come into the office because I say so, rather than you have to come into the office because you have an actual need to be in the office. Now, we do, prior to all this COVID stuff, we did do a lot of work from the office. That, frankly, could have been done from home. But there is something to be said for the general sense of communication that happens when you've got your development team in one place. But we've always been fairly flexible about that. And so I would imagine that that isn't really going to change too much. I do not have anything to announce on the reopening of character transfers and shared account transfers. I can tell you that we are still working to migrate our closed game worlds, the old dark production servers, right? To the new setup, which will allow us to reopen character transfers, say from, Windfulla and crew, that kind of thing, right? And that's one of the final pieces that's going to be involved in allowing us to reopen character transfers. But certainly at this point in the process, it is not productive to try to offer or speculate on a formal release date. At SSG, are we even aware of the huge problem with hunters? Yes. We have been reading your feedback for quite some time now about your desire to have us work on hunter DPS in particular. It is my hope that that work gets done in the relatively near future. And hopefully we'll have something to let you know about that you'll be glad to hear. So yes, we've been, we always read the forums and stuff, and so we've been hearing from you on that for some time now. As soon as we are in a position to be able to offer that work to the live worlds, we will. Some of the update 26 Runekeeper nerf, as it's been described on YouTube, is 100% deliberate. But yes, we are also keeping an eye on where that sits. I know the systems team plans to monitor it and make further adjustments as necessary. I've also seen, Jan, the comment, not just from you, but from others, about wardens in particular potentially either being overtuned or overnerfed due to the Fate bug fix. So I know that that's something that's on their radar. I would imagine they have read that feedback, so they'll be taking a look at it and doing what they decide they want to do with it. I know the earlier cooldown on Runekeeper was basically there is no cooldown. Now there is. So I would be surprised if some of that didn't remain. However, I think they would not generally want a Runekeeper to have no options other than wait for a cooldown while raiding. So if that's actually true, that let's just say they are universally everything they have available to them on cooldown, and they literally have nothing from which to press, then that's certainly something that we're going to need to take a look at. That is a really funny story about the wedding and the flowers. I like it. Okay. Where are you? Okay. I'm going to assume that that is now open to the north. Yay. Alright. Sorry if I'm running a little long. I can actually stop the stream if Corey is ready to go and is just sort of waiting for me. If I need to get off the air, I can do that. Otherwise, I'll probably just finish up the instance here if that's okay. It's mainly about the cash out on your attunement pips. Yeah, that cash out became pretty much trivial prior to update 26. And I know that they had done some work to return it to actually being I don't know, a thing that you actually do. Or you actually have to consider it, I should say. That's the better word. It sounds... I certainly know that there are those who feel we went way too far with it. And that would be ultimately a decision for the design team to take a look at. I know that they've certainly been hearing from the Rune Keepers on it, so hopefully that's something they can consider when the time comes for them to be able to do that. Anyway, Corey, if I'm overly taking up your time, just pop in and let me know. I'll get out of there. Or get out of here and finish this up off stream if I need to. Morguli Ritualist. Eek! Nice. Nice kitty. You're not a kitty. You kind of look like a giant bug in a face mask or something. I don't know. Good doggy. Good doggy. It's okay. All right. There we go. Okay. Anything else? Nope. I guess that is all that is needed. So I'm going to leave the instance and call it a show. Thanks very much for watching. Corey Olson will be up in just a minute. We have Druid's Fire on after that, and you can find the full schedule over on twitch.tv/LotroStream. I'll be back next Friday with more. Hope you have a good weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, have fun. See you soon.